All right, welcome to Real Late Show with Chris and Craig. We're actually this late, Craig.
Yeah, man, it's
This is
almost
good.
bedtime.
Yes, I'm already falling asleep myself. I'll tell you. But there is a lot to talk about in pop culture. And there's always stuff we can talk about, but sometimes we're like, let's talk about this. It might happen in the future. We actually have breaking news that we can talk about. Some interesting, some sad news. But let's start with our first topic. Um, we're excited about this ESPN and Fox streaming, and we're seeing some things start to line up. Some announcements are made, and ESPN and Fox are both making some moves. The ESPN move, I'm sorry, Craig, I'm feeling a little meh about it. Rich Eisen, who I like him a lot, he's been on a couple different streaming services, and now he announced a deal where it's kind of like Pat McAfee. He is kind of licensing a show to ESPN. He still has the rights, it's all his show, but it's going to appear on ESPN, but it's only going to appear on their streaming services. So it probably is direct to customer that we've been talking about that's supposed to start in September. I don't know, Craig, I don't know about you. I like Rich Eisen. I don't really check in on that much, so he's okay. I don't know. I'm neutral toward this. I'm not against Rich Eisen, but this alone is not making me want to subscribe to the direct-to-consumer service.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people might say that. I like Rich Eisen. I used to watch, sparingly, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, some people are all in on sort of the talking head shows like Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith, other people, and some people may casually watch it every now and then, like me, and I think that's kind of where I'm at. But I think this is probably just ESPN's attempt to corner the market, and I know that they're trying to purchase seemingly all things NFL Network related, and I know Rich Eisen obviously has a big play on the NFL Network, so this is kind of maybe that next step, I guess, as far as what ESPN's trying to accomplish, and sort of cornering a large market share on sports and entertainment.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like, I heard something about like Eisen might do a podcast where he talks to veterans of ESPN, which might be fun if you like the old ESPN and everything. It's just kind of funny because before it was licensed on Roku channel, so if you really want to watch the whole thing, you could do it there. Right. But like I was just checking out, he has a YouTube page. You can't watch the whole show, but Craig, unless we're a really big Rich Eisen fan, I'm only checking on the clip. Like if he talks about something I'm interested in, or he has an interesting guest too. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just not sure what to make of it. I guess it's good to have content. I mean, it's good to have more people. Maybe this isn't the move that they're only going to make. Hopefully there'll be some more moves down the road too. But at least you got somebody familiar with ESPN. Somebody, maybe an older person, would say, oh yeah, I remember watching Rich Eisen. It's really cool to have him back again. But I don't know. There was some talk about what does this mean with Pat McAfee. He made some comments today going, I'm not sure what this means. Well, you got to understand, if it's a streaming service, there's going to be a lot of content on there. Right. So I know Eisen and McAfee are on at the same time. But again, with the streaming, you could watch it later, or you could watch whatever. Again, it's just more content. So I don't think McAfee has to worry about that. I think ESPN is just is in the content acquisition mode, and the more content they can get, the better off they are.
Yeah, I think so. And, I think especially when you think about the summertime, there's really not a lot going on with ESPN and ESPN Plus. Obviously they're going to be losing baseball after this season, so they really don't have a whole lot of summer content right now. And I think that this will, at the very least, fill in some of the gaps in terms of their midday shows. And maybe at some point they might decide to break it apart and have one after another instead of both at the same time. But I also think that both of the audiences are probably different enough to where you're probably not going to see a lot of overlap anyway. So maybe there might be a few people here and there that watch Eisen but would love to watch McAfee, or vice versa. But I think at the end of the day that most of their audiences are probably different demographics in terms of age and what they're looking for. So I think it's probably not the end of the world that they're going to go on at the same time, because I don't think it's much competition between the two.
I can't imagine. Well, and they probably wouldn't go off of YouTube because part of McAfee's deal is he still has this YouTube show, and it would be silly to tell someone not to put their clips on YouTube. But it's funny to see some of this stuff being shared across other aspects too. And I gotta think that it's a nice thing for them to have Eisen on, but they're probably not looking at that as the only thing they need. I saw some people kind of criticize ESPN saying, why don't you do your own shows? Why are you licensing everybody else's show? Why wouldn't they license everybody else's show? I mean, does that make more sense to license it? It's a lot cheaper than having to do it on your own, right?
Yeah, I mean, that cuts away some of the production costs that you have, and obviously licensing the show, you're hoping that whoever you're licensing is going to continue producing a good quality show. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to spend all the extra money on studio space if you don't already have it. You don't have to spend money on crews. All you really need to do is just make sure someone hits the button at the same time they need to hit the button every day, and more or less you're good to go. So there's probably not a whole lot extra cost that's going into it other than just someone being there to kind of be sort of a behind the scenes producer and make sure that the show's operating at where it needs to be. And also too, I know that a lot of people wondered how the McAfee show would run on ESPN, given that there's bad language and things like that come up every now and again. And I think I don't know if they still do it, but they used to have the edited version on ESPN and then the unedited version on ESPN Plus. And, not that Rich Eisen gets into that kind of stuff, but, I think the licensing also kind of helped maybe give ESPN a little bit of an edge to itself, where it's not always so cookie cutter. And, it gave itself an opportunity to have a show that maybe a certain audience would gravitate toward because, people were speaking their language, if you will. And, I think licensing has helped ESPN be able to say, well, we can distance ourselves from the content. We just put the content on there and you have to find it if you want that specific, language or whatever. Whereas we have an edited version that you can watch as well if you, want to have it on during the day when your kids may be around or whatever.
Well, and with these streaming deals, they want you to stay on the app. So the name of the game is how do we keep people on it? And again, if you have McAfee and Eisen, it's totally different crowds. But as you said, hey, if you're into McAfee style, great, he's there for you. If you're into Eisen style, he's there for you too. So I think it's a win-win. We even heard stuff about like user-generated content, and maybe the thought would be is, people like you and I could maybe upload this thing on there. Not that they would be profiled significantly at ESPN, but again, it goes back to that thing of saying, hey, if we got 10 people to watch our thing, that's more content for this ESPN service of a bunch of different stuff. So in essence, why not have a bunch of yahoos or random people talk sports too? It's intriguing. I mean, there's a lot of things they could do there. Maybe there's some sports sites that I've worked with in the past that say, hey, anybody could write for this, and if you get a certain number of clicks, we might pay you a little bit. Maybe ESPN does something like that, where they have kind of like a YouTube part of the station where you can upload your sports show, and if one person watches it, okay, you're on it, but who cares? But if you can develop an audience and 10,000 people listen to it, maybe you get a small cutback. I don't know how that works, but they do that in Sports Illustrated and other things. It'll be interesting. If you're out there, I know there's some people are critical of McAfee's style from the language or whatever else the case might be. Well, more people are going to it. Dave Portnoy, who's kind of the real conservative version of McAfee, I would say. Fox hired him, and this deal is not just for him to be on Fox's college football show, but they're actually licensing some Barstool content to be on Fox. Now, I'm assuming this is this Fox One that's coming out. I don't think but you never know. Maybe they'll put a show on a random time of Fox, but I would imagine this is really in line with Fox One because they need more content with Fox One coming out, their streaming service. So why not license stuff from Barstool instead of hiring a bunch of new full time? I think it's kind of a smart move for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a direct competition to McAfee. We maybe get similar audiences, younger male demographics probably that gravitate toward Barstool. And, I think that when you have these programs, whether they're on YouTube or wherever they start, and they just organically get bigger and bigger and bigger, I think there's going to be more of this where people are going to, buy up those rights to put them on their site because they know there's built-in audiences. And Barstool Sports, whether you like it or not, does have a huge built-in audience. They have a lot of bars now as well. They even have a bar in Nashville as well. So this is a shrewd move, I think, for Fox because they know that they need content because they're going to be going up against behemoths like ESPN and other places that already have their streaming services out there and that have been out there for a while. And now they need to make sure that when they step into the fray that they've got enough for competition.
Yeah. Content means a lot. And there's some stories that probably be more appropriate to tell you offline about that. I'm hearing that even more in the fields where I work on, where I remember when we even started this podcast, we were kind of like, hey, let's keep it separate and everything. But I think there's a lot more places that are like, we want content. Is that from a local podcast or something else? Content's become the king there. So it'll be interesting. Barstool's not my thing. Portnoy's not my thing. He kind of lets his politics kind of get in the way, in my opinion. And I share Portnoy's politics, so I'm not as big of a fan of Portnoy by any means. But I think for Fox, it's smart. You have to get somebody that moves the needle. And even though he doesn't move my needle, Portnoy does move the needle, so it's probably a smart move for them. And to be honest, Portnoy kind of fits into Fox's politics better, so it kind of matches with what they're trying to do anyway. So I guess smart move by Fox. So we'll have to see. Well, what's something you think about all these moves? What is that big move that's going to get you to subscribe to ESPN? Craig, I will tell you, NFL Plus, you put NFL Plus in the red zone on ESPN, I'm subscribing. I'm in. I'll put it like that.
Well, it's probably coming, I bet.
Craig, is there one thing that they would do to do it for you? Like, what's one thing that could go on ESPN that you're like, dang it, I'm subscribing tomorrow?
I don't really think there is anything at this point, and it's not necessarily anything that they can and can't do or haven't done. It's just, I think, price wise, the biggest issue I have right now with ESPN Plus is the price has ballooned, and then they have like the the Disney, Hulu, and HBO Max bundle, which I have right now. But for some reason, they decided to not have ESPN Plus in that bundle, and I would have paid a little bit more to include that in there, and they decided not to. So, I've decided just kind of like, I don't really need ESPN Plus. It was fun to be able to watch college football on there, but it's everything's so spread out now in college football. Yeah, the SEC is now a big thing on ESPN as opposed to the Big Ten, but at this point, everything's so spread out that I'd rather just keep the multiple options like CBS, Peacock, and even Max. HBO Max has a little bit of college football on too. So I don't think there's really anything they can do to pull me back in unless they really, really commit to putting sports back on. Like, yeah, they have the NHL, agreement, which is nice, but they're losing baseball. They only have most of their football stuff is going to be pro football that's centered on talking heads as opposed to actual games. So it's kind of like, I love it, and I would take it in a heartbeat if it was cheaper, but I think it just got a little too expensive for what it's offering each season. Like, there are some times where you're going to get overloaded with sports opportunities and be able to watch various things. But then in the summer, like right now, there really wouldn't be a big reason to have ESPN Plus at this point.
Yeah, and what do you think? What's that for our listeners out there? What would do it for you? I mean, everyone's different. Depends on what sport you like, whatever streaming services you have. But what would do it for you with ESPN? We like to hear your response. And give us a like and subscribe. That's how we reach more people. Thanks as always for checking us out. Have a great day, everybody. All right, let me